Tons of PC hardware news today. Let's start out with a little follow-up on the RTX 4070. So we've been used to new GPUs launching their MSRP basically being fake. They sell out at MSRP, scalpers relist them at higher prices, and you never really get them at MSRP. Now, I went to PC Part Picker right now, a few days after launch. This is live, and so if I, type in 4070 RTX, because I can't type, and you sort prices low to high, you can see that there are many available at the $600 MSRP. And you can actually click on these, and yes, they are actually available. Now, that's both good news and bad news. It means it's easier to get if you actually want to buy one, but this is also meaning that people are really not excited about a $600 price for the RTX 4070. Now, in my review, as well as other reviews, you can see that the 4070 does offer an increase to price to performance, as well as new features, better energy efficiency, things like that at this price point. But it's just not a lot for this kind of generational leap. I don't think a lot of people are getting excited over it, and that could be influencing these kinds of prices sticking around. And, it would be nice if we'd actually see some price cuts on Nvidia's whole 40 series lineup, because overall, I think they have been excellent products that are all priced a bit too high to get excited about, to put it kind of mildly. Anyway, like I said, though, these are available, and you might notice if you're trying to buy one that you'll see things listed like this. Get Overwatch 2 Ultimate Battle Pass. Now, what is that? So it's looking like Nvidia is offering this bundle deal. I looked into it with their 40 series GPUs here. Looks like it's the Overwatch 2 Ultimate Battle Pass bundle plus an additional 1,000 Overwatch 2 coins. Comes with all of these, so if you are an Overwatch 2 player, perhaps you would, that would sweeten the deal and you'll get your 40 series GPU. Although honestly, do you really need a 40 series GPU to play Overwatch 2? Didn't seem all that demanding in my opinion. Now, if you're interested in a pink 4070, Galax has you covered, but I think these are only available in China at the moment. Links will be in the description to the article covering this, so hey, that's interesting at least. Now, let's hop into some Intel GPU news. So along with their latest driver update, they have published this chart. So this is coming from Intel themselves. I have not verified this myself. But they're claiming that on the latest driver versus driver version 4257, they're seeing some increased ray tracing performance, jumping up in some games, a couple FPS. Hey, better, at 1440p, better some than nothing. It's an improvement. But in other games, a little more noticeable here, jumping from 87 to 95 FPS on F122, for example. So it's very nice to see Intel continuing to make some improvements over time. Now, one of the big things in this release was if you've been trying to play the Dead Space remake on an Intel Arc GPU, it hasn't been going well for you. In this chart, you see the old driver here, the new driver here, and the RTX 3060 in green. So they're showing that they had been significantly behind. Their A750 had been significantly behind the RTX 3060 in Dead Space Remake until this latest driver, which now brought it up slightly faster at 1080p and more noticeably faster at 1440p high settings. And they are quick to capitalize on the performance per dollar of their A750 versus the RTX 3060, especially in Total War Warhammer 3 Mirror of Madness, which is, I think, what the main driver update, game-ready driver was here. So Intel making some big claims on their improvements and performance per dollar. Notice they do always show their performance per dollar versus NVIDIA's RTX 3060, and not even at its lowest sale price, but its average price of $388. And they're not showing it against AMD, who also offers significantly better price to performance than NVIDIA, but does have a more mature driver and software stack than Intel does at this point in time. But I am very happy to see Intel making these improvements. I hope they stay in the game. I hope they continue to compete on price. This is all very good to see. What's not good to see is GPU sagging breaking VRAM on 20 and 30 series models. So with the trend of bigger and bigger GPUs and coolers, Some of them are sagging, and it looks like over time that not only just looks bad, but it can break the GPU. In this specific report, we're seeing from tomshardware.com, but it looks like the original info is coming from Chris Fix Germany, who recently stirred up a lot of discussion in the space regarding some AMD GPUs that were broken that were shipped to him. Ended up being mistreated mining cards that were resold. Anyway, but he's showing that the memory modules can their solder points can break due to GPU sag. I think this is a 2080 Ti that he was specifically talking about seeing this happening on. But definitely don't skip the anti-sag bracket if you have a heavy GPU. If it's sagging, it's not, if you like, I don't care what it looks like in the case, yes, it can actually damage your PC over time. Now, on another note, let's talk about the 7800X3D. So the CPU from AMD that released a week or so ago. Now, I always wait for 3dcenter.org to publish one of these after a major CPU launch. I love these meta-analysis charts that they develop. So what this is, you can see the 7800X3D here set as the baseline 100%. You can see the rest of the X3D lineup with the 7900X3D, which remember has only 6 Vcache cores and 6 non-Vcache cores, whereas the 7950X3D has 8 of each, and the 7800X3D just has the 8 Vcache cores. You can, of course, see the 13900K, KS, 700, 600Ks, and then the rest of AMD's 7000 series and even the 5800X3D all get their own column here. Now, what's interesting is you then see all of these different review outlets who can only test so many games, right? To be clear, this is the gaming performance that we're looking at in this chart. They can each only test so many games, so then outliers can influence the results. For example, Gollum here seemed to have the 13900KS 11% faster than their 13900K, which doesn't seem right and doesn't line up with what other outlets were getting, right? So anyway, the more data points you get, the less outliers influence the mean. So if we then look at the average gaming performance here, we can see that, again, they're setting the 7800X3D as the baseline. Looks like on average, it's extremely close to the 13900K and KS, although winning by 2.9% and 2% respectively, but coming in at a much lower MSRP and significantly lower power targets, especially while gaming, it draws very low wattage. Whereas AMD's own 7900X3D is in an awkward position with only 6 of the Vcache cores for gaming. It only reaches 95% of the performance of this one while coming in at a higher price tag, where the 7950X3D at least holds its own and does come out ahead by a little over 1% on average in this test suite. So basically a tie, but again, coming in a lot more expensive, although significantly more useful in a productivity workload. Again, these are showing gaming performance, and if we looked at the gaming performance of a lot of these Intel CPUs, they would also then, the productivity, multi-threading support, those would pull ahead as well. You can then see AMD's previous offerings from their 7000 series and their 5800X3D offering good performance here, but definitely noticeably slower than the 7800X3D. There's a lot of other information in this article, so feel free to take a look at that. Again, all my sources will be linked in the description. But overall, the 7800X3D, I did buy one myself. It has arrived in the mail, and I will be upgrading my benchmarking PC to the 7800X3D. Not the 7950X3D, because for that extra 1% on average, I think that occasionally you just run into headaches with it, probably not going to be wanting to schedule properly which core is on and which cores are being used by the game. So rather than deal with those headaches in my benchmarking system, I will do the 7800X3D. Like I said, I'm also incredibly impressed by its power efficiency. So I was curious, can it run on the cheap motherboards without really losing any speed? And I did find an article here from Tom's Hardware published 5 days ago of the 7800X3D delivering similar gaming performance on X670 motherboards and A620 motherboards. The A620 are the new cheaper version motherboards being offered for AM5 that have finally recently launched from AMD. Keep in mind that the feature set it offers is certainly lower regarding PCIe Gen 5 lanes and all of that. So keep that in mind. But if you're looking for like a min-max esports build where you want the fastest CPU you can get, but you need to minimize your spending elsewhere in order to fit that in, it's an interesting prospect. It looks like the testing Tom's Hardware was reporting on wasn't actually conducted by themselves, though. It looks like they're reporting on something coming from another Korean YouTuber. But it looks like they also used a cheap cooler on the cheap motherboard and an expensive cooler on the expensive motherboard. I think just to emphasize that you could get away with a cheap motherboard and cheap cooler and still not see much difference in your actual gaming performance overall. So it means you can save a lot of money on the rest of the system if you need to, if you're trying to get the fastest gaming CPU in there, which is good to see. Now, I'm very interested in this. I found this article from The Verge. So I have a Steam Deck, and I use it a lot. Honestly, I've been gaming on playing like indie games on my Steam Deck more than I play on my gaming PC with the 4090 lately. Although I definitely use both. But I very much like the convenience of that form factor. I play it on my lunch break at work, that kind of a thing. However, with the popularity of the Steam Deck, which runs its own Steam OS, not that you can't install Windows on it, there's a lot of Steam Deck competitors that are getting more and more popular. And they're also offering better hardware than the Steam Deck does, but you have to run Windows. And running Windows, well, it's just not an optimized experience for the form factor in the way that SteamOS is. So I was excited to see Microsoft is experimenting with Windows gaming handheld mode for Steam Deck-like devices. However, this looks to be a hackathon project. Hackathon projects don't always turn into an actual released product, but if you dig into this, it does look like there was a lot of work done on it. It looks very interesting. I really hope that Microsoft would actually follow up on something like this. It would be so cool if devices like the announced ROG Ally from Asus would end up just... In other words, one of the reasons I'm sticking to my Steam Deck is... because of the software support. SteamOS is just very optimized for the console. It's awesome. But yeah, it would be cool to see competitors. Now, this article here is reporting that the ROG Ally is set to release worldwide, not just in North America, and it may be sooner than you expect. And so that's interesting. We'll see when we end up getting this. The other reason why I'm interested in this is just because we'll be able to see what looks to be an AMD RDNA3 APU in the ROG Ally. So it'll be really cool to see what RDNA3 performance numbers are going to give us versus RDNA2, like what we have on the Steam Deck and other similar devices at this point. Overall, I'm excited about the ROG Ally. Like I said, though, I'm pretty happy with the Steam Deck, and certainly from a price perspective, we don't have prices here, but I have a feeling that the Steam Deck is definitely going to be competing on price a lot more than the competition can. But Valve has announced that, they're not that interested in upgrading the hardware on it anytime soon, because I think they want to be, from a game developer perspective, more like targeting a console, where the performance stays the same over time for a number of years, so you can target that for your game development. I think that's Valve's perspective, whereas these competitor devices are free to upgrade to the latest and greatest hardware, which is why I would like to see the Windows more optimized for those types of devices. Now, Nvidia's RTX Video Super Resolution, which I've reviewed and was previously available for AI upscaling streaming video through the Chrome web browser at a big cost to energy consumption, it should be noted, is now supported by VLC Media Player. So this will be good news for people who want to watch their, I have friends who have a bunch of, anime and things like that, which I think actually works well for this kind of idea, because the Video Super Resolution, I felt like on a lot of live, I tested out on one of my own YouTube videos. I felt like my face looked over smoothed, that kind of a thing. But on animated content and game content, I think it can look very good. Again, high power consumption, But for people using VLC Media Player to watch offline content rather than streaming, I think it's really nice to see it get that support. So this is cool. And again, link to this article in the description. You would have to download the version of VLC that has it enabled, and then you still have to enable it through your NVIDIA control panel to get it to actually work. And for some reason, VLC used a photo of a 10 series GPU that wouldn't support this on the... whatever. Anyway. Whatever. All right. Now, other announcement from NVIDIA is RTX Remix Runtime has gone open source, available now. This is really cool. I like their whole RTX Remix thing. If you're unaware, RTX Remix is a modding tool that NVIDIA has developed in-house that can basically capture DX8 and 9 games and inject path tracing and other upgrades like DLSS and things like that into the game. This is how they developed their Portal RTX game, if you want an example of what we're talking about here. So this is really cool. So now there's also a creator toolkit that goes along with this that I think helps use AI tools to rebuild assets. That has not gone available yet, open source, but they say the early access to that is coming soon. But the RTX Remix Runtime has gone open source and is available now, and I think this is really cool. Honestly, what this does is incredibly impressive. I think I just messed up the formatting of that, but when I went full screen, I'm on an ultra-wide monitor, so this wouldn't capture correctly if I go full screen. Whatever. Anyway, I've covered this in more detail in other games, but I just think that what this does is really impressive. People have already been using RTX Remix. It's unclear here if these people had access to an early build of it or were just using the version injected into Portal RTX. I didn't go super in depth, but it looks like there's a Half-Life 2 path tracing mod looking pretty cool that's available. But anyway, I just love the idea of what modders can do with this kind of technology to just grab old games and inject the latest, path tracing tech, see what it does. Obviously, if you just inject it straight into the game without any other work, it's going to have mixed results. But if you take the time to craft the materials and all of that, it's just cool what people can do these days and how all of that works. So I'm excited to see that. Now, speaking of mods, how about Elden Ring getting DLSS modded into it? It's been frustrating that Elden Ring never had anything like FSR or DLSS from launch, and while they did finally update to include ray tracing, which had a very heavy demand on the GPU, they still didn't add in any FSR, DLSS, or XeSS support, which was frustrating. Well, it looks like there is a modder, Pure Dark, who has modded DLSS successfully into games like Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, Fallout 4, Resident Evil Village, and other RE Engine games, has got it up and running in Elden Ring. However, I believe it's still in beta, so at least at the time of this article's publication, which was a few days ago, you had to be a member of his Patreon. And honestly, I think supporting work like this through Patreon is not at all a bad idea. But if you want to get it for free, I think he does usually release them for free once they exit beta. This is a WCCF Tech article saying that he did actually test it out and got some noticeable performance increase using the RT mode at 4K. Anyway, I think it's really cool to see DLSS getting modded into games. I believe this same guy was trying to get DLSS 3 frame generation working in Skyrim, and has it, I think, the frame generation working, but not the reflex, which is an important part of frame generation to make the latency not terrible. Now, speaking of mods, frame generation, and path tracing and all of that, well, we've had the Cyberpunk 2077 RT Overdrive Mod available for a while now, but we've seen that's incredibly demanding to get to playable frame rates without heavy uses of DLSS and even frame generation. It would be nice if you could tweak the settings down a little bit, right? Well, it looks like over on Nexus Mods, there is a mod that tweaks the ini files to reduce the ray bounces from 2, which is what it does by default, down to 1, and it reduces the far range of the rays to 1600 from the original 2000. without removing any of the other, new features or whatever. So obviously that would reduce the image quality that you're getting from the path tracing, but it would also greatly reduce the performance demands of it. I haven't tested this myself, but there are some videos available linked in this article if you're interested. This might make it a lot more playable on the less powerful GPUs out there and could be something that people are interested in taking a look at. Now, speaking of ray tracing, path tracing, DLSS, all of that, Nvidia has published a blog post, highlighting how much people are using this. And I saw this getting posted on a lot of forums and things like that. But as a math teacher, I wanted some more details on these statistics. So here's one of the big stats. They say today 83% of GeForce RTX 40 series desktop gamers with RTX-capable games enable ray tracing. And I was thinking, man, that is a big number. And I get that a lot of people buy a 40 series GPU to play with ray tracing. But, some people don't. They just want the overall performance. I feel like the performance hit from ray tracing is too big. So this is NVIDIA trying to say that the 40 series is powerful enough that, 83% of people playing ray tracing capable games on an RTX 40 series GPU are enabling the ray tracing, and 79% of them are turning on DLSS, showcasing the widespread adoption of these revolutionary technologies. Now, I reached out to my marketing contact at NVIDIA, as well as reading the footnotes here to try to get clarification on what exactly this stat means, because I don't think it means what they think it means, or what they're trying to make you think it means. Because my understanding of this is telemetry data through GeForce Experience, which the way they're phrasing this to me sounds like a person owning a 40 series GPU and a game that supports ray tracing, if they ever turn it on at all, would be counted in this number. I would think that what we'd really want to see a meaningful number for is, did they turn on ray tracing and then actually play the entire game with it enabled, or most of the game? Same thing with DLSS. So I don't think this stat says what they think it says, although I do think that 40 series GPU owners, considering that when this was published, you have the, 4090, which can definitely use ray tracing meaningfully, and the 4080, which can definitely use ray tracing meaningfully, and the 4070 Ti, which, depending on the game and the resolution you're using, can definitely use ray tracing meaningfully. So I'm not trying to argue that people with the 40 series GPUs aren't going to be using those features. I just don't like the way this stat is being reported, because statistics can be extremely misleading. Now, interestingly, though, we do at least have some comparison point to the 30 series and the 20 series, where they're saying the 30 series, the ray tracing number is 56%, and 20 series is 43%. Again, turn on ray tracing. For how long? Okay, anyway. While 71% and 68% turn on DLSS, respectively. And this is definitely showing what I think is true, which is that of the two features, DLSS is by far the bigger selling point than RT. Although as the GPUs do get more powerful, the ray tracing performance does, ray tracing does become more usable, and I do think it makes sense that we would see a higher number on the 40 series, especially because I think these numbers were gathered before the 4070 launched. So this was exclusively 4070 Ti and up, which were powerful GPUs. Anyway, interesting stuff. Let's move on. How about NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang to present opening keynote at Computex 2023? Now, the date for that is the 29th of May. And we don't know if this would include any major product announcements, so this could be a good time to unveil a new GPU. What would that be? Could we get a 4060 or 4060 Ti? We had seen leaks and rumors pointing to May or June release dates for those products, so that's possible. And heck, there's plenty of room for like a 4080 Ti between the 4080 and 4090 given the performance gap, and the 4090 is not even the full GPU die, so there's room for a 4090 Ti. So I mean, there's certainly room for some more products in the product stack. Who knows if we will hear about any of those on May 29th, but we certainly might. Moving on, I saw what at first was a very interesting article to me from Tom's Hardware saying AMD ROCm comes to Windows on consumer GPUs. And I was like, wow, really? Now, you might be not familiar with this because it's not super gaming focused, but AMD has Radeon Open Compute Ecosystem. ROCm came out in 2016 as an open source alternative to Nvidia's CUDA platform for productivity compute workloads. However, it's been more supported on their CDNA, their professional applications, compute GPUs, that kind of things. And not so much on the consumer graphics. Also, it's been designed for Linux for the most part, although there have been ways to get it working on consumer GPUs and Windows and things like that. However, it would have been really cool if this was just straight up available on Windows for consumer GPUs, as the headline seems to be pointing to here. But it looks like the Tom's Hardware reporter here may have jumped the gun a bit with that headline. I was looking for more info here, and I found some follow-up on this on the R Hardware subreddit, saying AMD has, this needs clarification, AMD hasn't announced anything. Tom's Hardware was looking at some documentation for an in-development release of ROCm 5.6 and built a story based on that. However, none of that was officially announced. This may or may not actually come out. And we're seeing an edit here that one of AMD's developers has also quietly commented on the matter in an unofficial capacity, saying you are reading too much from a website marked alpha. Okay, so that's, I think, putting a damper on that being any big official thing, at least coming anytime soon. Now, I should also mention that hackers claim vast access to Western Digital systems. So if you have any data hosted with Western Digital, that is certainly something to keep your eye out to. And if you want more details on all of this, again, a link to everything I talk about here will be in the video description. And let's end with a couple quick system requirements details. It looks like the Lord of the Rings Gollum PC system specs have been published. It looks like for the minimum, they're saying that if you want to be playing at 1080p medium with RT turned off, you'd be good to go with a GTX 1080 or an RTX 2060 with 16 gigabytes of RAM and an Intel 4770 or a Ryzen 5 1600. However, the recommended specs are for the high preset at 1440p with ray tracing on, and even using DLSS quality, that's asking for an RTX 3080 along with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Now, they're not listing the frame rate target. I sure hope it's 60 FPS and not 30 FPS, as sometimes happens with system requirements lists. And then the last system requirement thing I noticed was the Jedi Survivor system requirements were updated to show an extremely large file size requirement of 155 gigabytes. So make sure you've cleared up some storage space if you're going to be playing Jedi Survivor. I hope all of you have an excellent day.